Olá, gente, tudo bem com vocês? Deixa eu colocar aqui o comentário. Ó, o título. Tudo bem com vocês? Vou fazer uma breve introdução antes da nossa convidada entrar na nossa live, que depois ela vai falar em inglês. A gente não vai conseguir ter uma tradução simultânea, deixa eu colocar aqui os comentários off. A gente não vai ter uma tradução simultânea, mas eu prometo para vocês que posteriormente a gente vai fazer essa tradução e vamos colocar as legendas em português. Para mim é uma honra, né, estar trazendo uma pessoa tão renomada, uma pessoa com tanta amplitude científica, né? Porque depois a gente vai falar um pouquinho da experiência dela. Deixa eu ver se já está aqui. Ela não está aqui por enquanto, mas assim que entrarem eu vou falar. Então, a Françoise, ela ela é a diretora científica de uma clínica que fica na Suíça, na divisa com a Alemanha. Ela se formou em medicina em 1982, ela é uma médica, e ela também teve seu doutorado na Suíça. E desde o doutorado ela já estudava sobre as questões do jejum. Isso foi mais ou menos na década de 80. Então ela fez o seu jejum pela primeira vez quando ela tinha 17 anos. E a partir de então, desse jejum, ela começou a se dedicar a essa chamada medicina integrativa, que é essa medicina que vai além de tratar os sintomas, mas também colocar o seu corpo numa sintonia, no modo de cura, de autofagia, coisas que o jejum, ela vai explicar, podem proporcionar. Então, ela se casou com o neto do fundador desse instituto, Buchinger, e a partir de então ela começou a trabalhar como uma diretora científica. Então o trabalho dela está em coletar dados científicos dessas pessoas que vão se hospedar nessa clínica, as pessoas, e ela faz esses estudos vinculados a universidades, aos hospitais, principalmente no Hospital de Charité de Berlim, e aí ela consegue ter essa amplitude maior científica, né? Comprovar os benefícios, digamos, na área da ciência e estatística. Em 2019, ela publicou o maior estudo do mundo sobre os impactos, os efeitos do jejum nesse centro terapêutico de Buchinger. Deixa eu ver aqui. Já está aqui. Nossa, tô um pouco nervosa, mas vai dar tudo certo. E no final eu vou abrir para perguntas para vocês. Vamos ver. O Instagram. Hello, Dr. Françoise. How are you?
Fine, thank you, Flavia. I'm very happy to be your host, your guest today.
Thank you so much. I was introducing you before in Portuguese, explaining about your work now. I'm so happy, so glad to have you here. And can you introduce yourself, tell me about your work, please?
Well, my name is Dr. Françoise Wilhelmi de Toledo. I'm born in Geneva and I was into fasting. My first experience was done with 17. Then I studied medicine, heard nothing about fasting, unhappily enough. And I am working more than 40 years in one, when not the most traditional fasting clinic, medically guided in Überlingen and Marbella, in Germany and south of Spain. Since 40 years, and the head of a research department, so scientific director.
Yes, I was explaining that so I will start with our questions about your two studies in 2020 about fasting. Could you give us as explanation about your study, what's your interests about fasting in scientific directions?
Actually, it's not 2, but 8 we did in 20
Yeah.
and 21. Yes, the first study we did in 19 was to document the security of our program. And we did that in a publication in PLOS ONE. And then we demonstrated that during long-term fasting, according to the program of the Buchinger clinics, during 5, 10, 15 or 20 days, we diminish the oxidative stress. We diminish the oxidation of the lipids particularly, and we enhance the total antioxidant capacity. And the oxidation status of the persons when they start give a prediction about the efficiency of the fasting. Then we had a very nice cohort of 1,610 humans. You know, fasting research is mostly done with animals. I suppose we are the only place in the world where we have such a cohort. They were doing 5, 10, 15 or 20 days of fasting according to the program. And we looked at the hypertensive group, the people who took medication against hypertension. They could reduce the medication in 50% of the cases and eliminate the medication in 25% of the cases. The non-medicated, they all normalized their blood pressure. The medicated, where we took off the medicine, they didn't have a rebound. So it was really showing that you can treat hypertension. And the normotensive persons, they didn't go down, they just stayed normal. And we had even a group of 40 women who had lower blood pressure, hypotensive, and they tended to enhance their blood pressure. So our conclusion was that fasting is a modulation and not only just diminish or enhance something. The third study was about the subfractions of cholesterol. We could show that the triglycerides very abruptly diminish during the first days of fasting already, and then the LDL cholesterol, and especially the subfractions of cholesterol, which are the small dense, very atherogenic, are the most diminished. And then the last study, which is just about being published now, it has been accepted. This is the most important for us, showing that the muscle strength is enhanced in the legs, normal doesn't move in the upper part of the body, and is also something that when you have always a fear of losing proteins. This is not true. There is no loss of proteins when you fast. There is a utilization of proteins. They don't come from the muscle. The muscle are wonderfully protected. They come a little bit from the muscle, but mostly from other metabolically active tissues like the liver and that other, like other things.
It's amazing, amazing. The second question, many people with many diseases believe that just change their diet can improve their health. Do there exist exclusive benefits to the practice of prolonged fasting? The benefits you can have with a diet?
Well, if you change your diet, you know, from an industrial food, extremely ultra-processed food, and you go to organic homemade meals, you can have enormous benefits. But it doesn't prevent to do the fasting is a metabolic switch, and it suppose it changed the programs, it changed the genetic programs, the metabolic programs, and it gives the only possibility as an adult to enhance the cell regeneration. So, you know, you will destroy old and damaged cells in an accelerated way and rebuild them out of stem cells or out of new protein synthesis after the fasting. And a diet will not give you this extraordinary possibility. A part of that, you have a lot of therapeutic effects that you can have partly with some kind of diet, but not in this amount. And at the same time, fasting is easy to do if you do it in a proper setting. The long-term fasting must be done under medical supervision, and it has also to be in a special setting, in a natural setting, where people are together. There is a community created by fasting together, and you have also an inspiration and a spiritual dimension that food changes alone are not giving.
Yeah, perfect. I will, the question number 3, could you explain how the antioxidant capacity of the body is enhanced during a long-term fasting?
Well, first, during the long-term fasting, you diminish the oxidative stress. You don't digest anything, so there is a metabolic stress linked to an oxidative stress when you confront your inner body with food from outside. This is over. The setting in there where you make the fasting should be a place which is very natural, with pure air, with a good nature, forests, etc. So that's the first thing. Then in our study of 100 cases fasting 15 days, we had an augmentation of the total antioxidant capacity and the diminution of the lipid peroxidation. How is it possible you don't give any antioxidants when you fast? Well, we give juices and a little bit of vegetable soups, but it's not the quantity you would get if you have a fresh diet with a lot of vegetables, fruits, and spices. So we were concerned about it. We don't give enough antioxidants, maybe we create oxidative stress. No, it's not the case, because the endogenous antioxidants are enhanced. And this, first of all, uric acid. Yeah, uric acid is known by most of the nutritionists or the doctors as something you have to avoid absolutely to augment the uric acid. Yes, it's true in eating persons. When you're on a fasting mode, you never, in our clinics, very, very seldom we have a gout attack with extremely high levels of uric acid. And the toxicologists, they say, well, this is fantastic because uric acid is the most potent antioxidant. Bilirubin is also an endogenic antioxidant. And the metabolic switch, you switch the fasting program, so you don't use the sugar out of the food, but you use your own fat and the ketone body, especially the beta hydroxybutyrate coming from your own fat. And this triggers a lot of enzymes, which are antioxidants, like the catalase, the superoxide dismutase, the peroxidases. So the whole antioxidant mechanic is enhanced during the fasting. And at the same time, you have a regeneration of the mitochondria. So the old mitochondria tend to be eliminated, young ones come to replace them, and probably the leakage of the oxidative stress coming also from the normal respiration is diminished.
It's amazing, amazing. Can you explain how fasting can be used in therapeutic effects against the disease, some like cancer or other disease?
Well, the therapeutic effects of fasting are multiple, especially if you choose the person's right, you have the right program, and you have a good medical setting. That's very important. So the first thing, you reduce the weight. And for many, even cancer, some sorts of cancer are better just by losing weight. And then, of course, you cannot use a long-term fasting in cachectic or sarcopenic persons, and sometimes very aged persons or very ill persons are not strong enough for a long-term fasting. You use alternative methods like intermittent fasting and some low-calorie ketogenic diets, for instance. But the long-term fasting makes the metabolic switch and at the same time switches the genetic program. So normally the genes that are activated, the aging genes, are activated essentially by proteins and especially some amino acids, but also by sugars. And these don't come anymore in your body. So you switch the genetic program to a protected mode. The cells are in a protected mode. They accelerate the autophagy, they accelerate the apoptosis. So, and after the fasting, so you eliminate a lot of unfunctional material, especially cell structure and cells. And then after the fasting, you regenerate them anew. So you have a fantastic clinic and acceleration of the regeneration processes. And then you diminish inflammation, you diminish oxidative stress, you have a mood enhancement. And above all, something difficult to believe, you're not hungry. And if you do it in the right setting, with the right person guiding you, then it is something that people look forward in advance to do. And you're not always very happy to do a restrictive diet all the time. So according to the Circadian Rhythm, which programmed in your prehistoric brain, when it's dark, you should fast and sleep. This is restoring. If you do intermittent fasting and you fast really 12 to 16 hours during the darkness, during the night, then you have a restoration of your circadian rhythm. But you have also a year rhythm according to the cycle of the seasons. And when you do once in a year a long-term fasting from 5 days to 20 days, according to your age, weight, nutritional status, illnesses, then you are in the rhythm, the two most important prehistoric rhythms, the day rhythm and the year rhythm.
Perfect. Psychology effects of fasting. Could you explain fasting as a holistic method?
Yes, because most of the studies on fasting are done with animals. It's like I said before, most of the time with mice and little animals, even flies, in labs. So of course you have only one dimension, is the physiological dimension. So you see what happens in the body and which effect you could sometimes copy with a drug, or this is what the research are more interested in. We come from the tradition, natural medicine, religious tradition, and we have founded scientifically a method which you use for three reasons. Therapy and prevention, yes, this is the medical dimension. You have it for humans too. But the humans, when they fast together, they build a community, a very tight community. And you see that in some religions like the Muslims that today still have a sort of fasting, which is more a sort of time-restricted eating, Ramadan. But in that period, there's a very strong feeling of belonging together. In animals, you have that too. And then the third dimension, which is the dimension of interiority, the spiritual dimension. When you fast, you're a bit away from material things. You're more into yourself. You can have an interiority. You can check if you weigh the right way, the things you do right, the things you do wrong, and maybe correct your life trajectory. So the three dimensions are not existing in any diet. This is the particularity of fasting, and this is why it's an holistic practice.
Yes, perfect. About allergies, fasting can reduce the discomfort of any allergy?
Well, fasting, an allergy is primarily an inflammation. An inflammation sort of induced by something which is really no big deal. Huh? An allergen is a pollen. Normally you don't mind, but you have a sort of wrong program making you react. So you have histamine production in contact with the allergens. First, when you fast, you diminish all the allergen load because you have no food in your body. in contact with your digestive system, mucosal walls. And this diminishes enormously the allergen load. Then you have a direct effect of the metabolic switch of fasting, but on diminishment of the whole inflammasome, especially the beta hydroxybutyrate, this fat derivative that you use as fuel during fasting, is extremely triggering the diminution of the inflammasome, diminution also of the monocytes, which are high inflammatory cells. And the inflammation for good reasons, which is defense against invasion, still functions in fasting. So you diminish the overreaction, over inflammation, which is an allergy. And in principle, you can also use some form of very restrictive diets. If you have, for instance, a seasonal allergy, like a pollen allergy, you can do a low calorie, low protein, low sugar, no milk, no gluten. So only 10 items. This is what I do in April when I have a birch allergy. And this it's down-regulated the whole process. So you don't have the symptoms, or very, very little symptoms. So fasting can, if you fast long-term during the season where you have the pollens, then you will have less, it doesn't mean you have less symptoms, but it doesn't mean you're cured from your allergy. Still, you can understand that there is an anti-inflammatory nutrition. And this is a good example, and it prevents you to take a lot of drugs which are not very good to take because they make you tired. And
Yes, perfect. Can a person who is already thin make a long fast?
Well, it depends on the reasons. For instance, for arthritis, polyarthritis, many times the women are already thin. So we have always to weigh the advantages and the disadvantages. It reduces, of course, if you have an overweight person, or if you have a person with very good nutritional status, the fasting is no problem. If you have a normal weight and a good nutritional status, you're not too old, you can do the long-term fasting. Our oldest patient at Buchinger Wilhelmi in our clinic in Überlingen have stopped fasting and turned to a ketogenic, low-calorie diet at age 92. But he was trained since age 14, every year to do 3 weeks of fasting. And so, there is a limit where probably, and this is a very individual limit. This is why we have an individual treatment for every patient we have in our clinics. And I think this is not a bad idea. The age and the weight, is not all. You have the biological age, and you have also the good nutritional status, even in lean persons. But of course, if you're lean and a bit aged, then you tend to have shorter periods of fasting. But still, you should have them.
Yes, perfect. The last question, in your experience, do you think that from how many days can you have benefits in autoimmune disease, such as polyarthritis, for example, or other issue?
Well, there is too little studies on the topic, and especially too little human studies. There was in the 90s a study published in the Lancet about polyarthritis persons, and they fasted 10 days, having an extremely and relatively quick result, so diminishment over all the arthritis indexes. It's a very, very serious disease, rheumatoid arthritis. And they could maintain. The problem is the food reintroduction. With all the inflammations, you have very rapid improvement. And this is good for the motivation of the people. They have hope again. This is very important. But you have to teach them absolutely how to eat. And we advise now to follow a lightly ketogenic diet. So according to Michael Pollan, eat food, not too much, mostly plants, but then with high good fats, nuts and seeds and the cold pressed oils, organic oils, yes, not the bad fats. And low meat, little, not too much, minimum of proteins, which is okay, and maybe test the items. This is what they did in this article of the Lancet. And every time they were introduced an item, they tested it over 2 days. If the person was okay, then they said, okay, this item is okay. So it's a very long process, but it's extremely efficient. And they had a very good result even after 3 years. In our case, you know, our founder, Dr. Otto Buchinger, we are a family business. 4 generations, now my sons and my niece is now in charge of the clinics. And we have fine-tuned the method of this founder. He didn't invent the fasting, but he noticed that fasting was enormously helping for polyarthritis because he suffered himself of polyarthritis, and a very bad one after a streptococcal infection. This is arthritis you had before the invention of antibiotics, but still he was almost in a wheelchair. And in 19 days of fasting, he could recover his old, but he was extremely skinny afterwards, and he had to recover from the fasting, but he had never relapsed. So of course, this story from someone which is very near to us, that we knew, is always maintaining our faith, and we see the people with an inflammatory disease, especially arthritis and polyarthritis, having very quick and good results, but they have to change absolutely their nutrition and their lifestyle if they want to maintain the results.
Yeah, I think the fasting is a kind of hope because there are a lot of people is very sick and the medication is not enough for to have a good life and to a lifestyle. So I think this scientific about fasting is like a hope. We can have a better life, not like you said, not a cure, but better options. And I think it's the wonderful. So I will open for the questions, the comments, and I will try to translate, but I will try.
Maybe I understand a little bit of Portuguese.
Do you speak Portuguese?
I understand, I think, maybe, and if I don't, I tell you.
Okay, of course. Why did you tell me? Let me see. Gente, vocês podem fazer perguntas. Ela disse que entende um pouco ela entende português. Se ela não entender, ela vai me dizer. Então, vocês podem colocar aqui as suas perguntas sobre jejum. Eu vou fazer um resumo breve do que ela falou, que o jejum ele tem efeitos magníficos, né? E principalmente efeitos da diminuição da inflamação, e que com uma mudança na dieta, né, uma dieta menos inflamatória, juntamente com o jejum prolongado, com supervisão médica, ele pode trazer muitos benefícios. Então, o pessoal, vou ver se tiver alguma pergunta aqui. Gente, podem fazer algumas perguntas.
For 24 hours, I think.
24 hours, a pergunta.
24 hours is not a very typical amount of time because, you know, the 3 first days are the more difficult because the metabolic switch, if you're not trained, will take some days. And if you do only 1 day, it might be the most difficult. It's not bad. It's always good to make a pause in the food intake. Always good, as long as you don't eat twice as much in the next day. So if it's a rhythm, in my opinion, intermittent fasting, 8 hours when you eat, 16 hours when you fast, it might be more easy, more feasible. But if you're comfortable with 24 hours, it's a good pause. You know, there is another intermittent fasting method, which is the 5-2. They don't make a total fasting during 1 or 2 days in the week, but they do eat 600 calories in 1 or 2 days in the week, and this is excellent. Yeah. As long as you don't eat twice as much on the next day.
Yeah. It's perfect. I think this is a good question. How many days can we fast at home that is safe? It's
Well,
an important
um,
question.
in my opinion, you shouldn't fast at home except intermittent fasting, because long-term fasting requires a group, requires taking care of, and sometimes really a medical. If you're very healthy, if you're really healthy and young and you have a good nutritional state, then it's okay. But I cannot recommend it as a medical doctor.
Yeah,
I prefer to.
yeah, yeah. I know. Another question about who did the bariatric surgery. Do you think fast is good for that people?
Oh, which type of surgery?
Bariatric, it's a bariatric surgery when you cut a piece of your stomach.
Ah, well, normally you are forced. It's a forced fasting when you don't have enough
Yeah,
room in your stomach, or if you do an intestinal bypass. I prefer
yeah,
do it normally, the way animals and humans have always done. When you have no food in the winter time, then you stop eating and your metabolism switch to your fat storage. Why do you have fat in your body? It's mainly because you will need it sometimes. And in our time, since 60 years in our countries, we think we can, it's normal to have food all the time, and it's normal
yeah,
to have more food in the winter time, but it's not. We just degenerated. So
yeah,
I'm not for operations sometimes, and many people cannot change their lifestyle from industrial food and sedentarity. It's because the lifestyle of today is not done for the people, it's done for the industry. So I'm sorry to say that, but it's not the environment we have. Many people don't even have a store where they can buy good food. So if they do an operation, they feel better afterwards, it's okay, but it's not the way I'm I'm loving myself, and I teach to the people. I prefer that they experience their own program, which is in their genes. And
yeah. I totally agree with you. So I want to thank you again. It's an amazing interview, and thank you for your time. I know you are very busy, a very important person. And I later I will talk about your book. De Françoise, a Françoise, ela tem um livro de jejum terapêutico. Eu vou deixar essa live salva. Eu vou escrever o título do livro para vocês no Amazon, está disponível. Vocês podem comprar o livro. Ela me falou da possibilidade de traduzir para o português, né? To translate your book for Portuguese. We need,
yes,
nós
I understand
precisamos.
you. I understand you,
Yeah.
Portuguese. And we have also a YouTube channel from Buchinger Wilhelmi, very difficult to pronounce the name of the clinic, where we explain a lot of the things I said. So maybe some people could be interested in it.
Sim, eu vou deixar os endereços do YouTube, do livro, de todos onde vocês possam encontrar o canal da clínica. Sigam, é um trabalho maravilhoso. Eu conheci o trabalho de vocês naquele documentário do francês Lestrade about the science of fasting, do you know? And I saw your work and I saw you. And, é maravilhoso esse trabalho que você faz. Novamente, thank you so much.
Como on dit, muito obrigado.
Muito obrigada.
Good evening to all. Thank you very much for listening and for inviting me.
Ok,
Bye.
bye bye. See you.